Hey guys, it's Clint. I've been reading. I don't know. I've seen this argument come up several times on Twitter, and I've been reading it. Sort of different versions of it over and over and over again. And a lot of that is Comicsgate like Image Comics, or is it not? And for some reason, well, and I get it. This is the natural comparison that comes up because Image Comics was. It was a big disruption to the comic book industry. It's undeniable, right? I don't know who would be arguing that. There's definitely a major disruption to the comic book industry when a whole bunch of top artists went and did their own thing and created their own comics. And not only did they do that, but they made a ton of money while they were doing it. Okay, so I don't know anybody that is really making the argument that Comicsgate is Image Comics. Like it's exactly doing the same thing that Image Comics did. It's the new Image Comics. I don't know anybody that's actually making that argument. However, there are a lot of people that are making the comparison, and let's think about why. It's because right now in comics, and granted, the landscape for the comic book industry today is so different than it was in the early 90s. It's so different. But something that is similar is that some creators have left and gone their own and done their own thing. Something I think that's not as comparable is that it's really given new creators a chance to come in and do their own thing and have success. Regardless, though, there is something that has been disrupting the norm. It may have started with Comicsgate. It may be evolving into something else. Indie comics in general is evolving. Things are changing. And I keep seeing people argue against this, that nothing's changing, or that nothing that's happening in Comicsgate or surrounding Comicsgate or any of that actually matters. I disagree. This is huge what is happening. Now with Image, you're talking massive sales numbers. And I watched this documentary. This is by Sci-Fi, so I actually had pretty low expectations. But it was pretty good. It was informative. I didn't quite finish the whole thing. I'm going to finish it. But it was interesting. And it got me thinking about in, 10, 15, 20 years, when somebody looks back and they decide to make a documentary about Comicsgate and what happened and what changed in the industry, who are they going to be interviewing, and what are those big key events that they're going to be talking about? Now, if you really think that in 10 or 15 years that all of this will be forgotten and that nothing will have changed, it won't be in anybody's memory or of any importance to anybody, I think that you're wrong. I think that you're severely mistaken. And the similarities, they continue, but it is very different. So the sales numbers, you're talking about in the millions. Back when Image books were happening, I don't know, is it Jim Lee's book? Now I'm getting all the numbers confused, but I think it was Jim Lee's book sold 2 million copies. I know Spawn sold a lot. Wildstorm, all these guys, they were selling a ton of comics in the beginning. Things changed, right? But in the beginning, they demonstrated basically a proof of concept. They demonstrated that they could be successful, that they could make money. Now that's happened today in a very different way. It hasn't gone through comic book stores, and there's not already this standard for extremely high sales. And there's not this rock star, comic book artist kind of culture that there was at the time. Things were different. At the same time, there are still a lot of similarities. And some of those, I think, are unexpected similarities. The infighting that happened with Image Comics, and this is something that a lot of people don't like to talk about. Some people like to talk about it an awful lot, though, let's be fair. But the infighting that happened between these Image founders, not all of them, but there was some bad blood when Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld went back to Marvel Comics to do books. There were differences that people had. They were sometimes extremely unprofessional, and I don't mean necessarily to each other, but Jim Lee, in this documentary, he told a little story about how they were talking business, and Rob Liefeld was walking around without a shirt on, and Jim Lee had his young baby daughter like strapped to his chest. He's holding her, and it was just this weird time, and not like professional, I guess, so to speak. But they still accomplished, because you got a room full of creative people. They still accomplished some really amazing things, and I think you'd be hard pressed today to say that didn't matter. Now, I think one of the major differences here, as I'm kind of reflecting on the Comicsgate, what it has accomplished so far, and what the future holds in store, is that the story is still being written. It would be really difficult for there to be a documentary that just came out tomorrow that had everything about Comicsgate and explained everything that went down, and that's because things are still evolving. Things are changing. So I believe that there could be a second Image Comics that could spring out of this, and really, like, when you looked at Image Comics initially, Image owned the logo and it owned the name. That was it. And everybody else had a studio that was just basically their own imprint of Image Comics. And so they shared, I guess, the infrastructure, but they were all doing their own thing. They didn't have to get permission from each other. And that was actually written as, I guess, part of the rules or the founding documents, that they wouldn't interfere with what one another was doing. They would just do their thing. Now, that could happen today. I'm not sure that it is something comparable, but it could. It would look very different, though, because social media has changed quite a bit. And in fact, social media, I think, is a big reason why Comicsgate is able to even exist, because you're talking about such a consumer-led movement. I look on Twitter and if you just search Comicsgate, it's like there's some of the nastiest things people could be saying. But at the same time, that helps define it. I feel weird saying that, but it is like there's this battle, and there's a lot of people that are very passionate on all sides of Comicsgate about it. And so I don't know. I just have a hard time when people say that it's not making an impact. I don't want to point anybody out, but most of the people are ones that don't like Comicsgate whatsoever, don't care about it, and they want it to fail. Those are a lot of the people that are saying that they don't want to have any comparison between Image. Now, I don't think it's important that it plays out how Image played out. In fact, I think there are a lot of things that Image could have done very differently, or that they still could do very differently. But it's hard not to appreciate, and this is why I liked Image Comics to start off with. It's hard not to appreciate creators that feel neglected or underappreciated, and then they leave and go and do their own thing, and they're successful at it. That's cool. But something that's I feel like I'm maybe being a little cheesy here, but I don't know, just reflecting on how things have changed. It's just weird. Like, I have 1,000 followers on Twitter. That's not a big deal. I've got like 3,300 YouTube subscribers, something like that. Things have been growing at a slow and steady pace, but at the same time, they're moving. And I'm just one person. This is just one channel. They've been moving for a lot of people. For somebody getting into comics, it's a totally different struggle. And I'm looking at Robert Kirkman here because his story of breaking into comics was really interesting, and pitching the story for The Walking Dead. He wanted to succeed with just the zombie story that he wanted to tell. But he had to convince somebody else, not just somebody else. He had to convince a couple people to give him a shot to tell a story. Things are different now. And I know that there's a lot of creators that are new. There's a lot of writers. There's a lot of artists. And they're looking for a chance. And the interesting thing that's so different is you don't have to convince a publisher to let you in. You just have to convince the consumer. Now, I don't know anybody that's selling 1 million comic books or even 500,000 in Comicsgate. I hope that day comes. I hope things evolve, and that there's going to be the kind of distribution, the kind of demand that supports something like that. but the story is still being told. When they make a documentary about this in who knows how many years, it's going to happen. I mark my words, it's going to happen. When they tell that story, who is going to be interviewed? What are some of the internal fighting and the beefs that are going to get brought up? And how important are those going to be to the future of comics creators, the future of the industry, the future of any intellectual property that really take hold and make a difference, make an impact on culture? I don't know the answers to those questions. I do know, though, that I want to be like Robert Kurtman here. I want to be there saying that I took a chance. I took a little bit of a risk and put in a lot of work, and I was able to at least make a shot, make a go out of changing something. And even if that's just for me. Sorry, I know it ended up being, like, I wanted this to be more of a critical thing, but as I got watching this, it just gets me excited. Like, this is the kind of stuff I love watching. Sci-fi, I guess I have to give them, credit where credit's due. Usually I hate their interviews and things. But this was good. It makes me want to do a better story. It makes me want to be able to make my mark somehow. And I know that there are a lot of indie creators that watch this channel, and you're all trying to find ways to get in. You're trying to find ways to be a part of the history that's coming. I think a lot of you recognize that there's something different and unique happening. Anyway, so let me know what you think in the comments below. A big part of that future, I want it to be Downcast, and I've been working really, really hard to make this book something great. It's something that I believe in. If you haven't backed it yet on Indiegogo, we're going to get close. I bet when I post this, we're going to be really darn close to hitting $21,000. That's a pretty big deal, breaking into comics here. So if you haven't backed it yet, check it out in the link in the description below. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, you get all that stuff. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.